Afternoon, adventurers. We are back with the F spells. The spells that start with the letter F that changed in the Player's Handbook 2024 back in September. The letter F has a bit longer of a list than E did, but not terribly long. Let's get into it. First and foremost, we have Feeble Mind. This has been changed. The name has been changed to Befuddlement, which I went over in my B video. I'll put it up there. Why not? For clarity, I'll go over it again here, just real fast. In a nutshell, it's been renamed to Befuddlement. The material component has changed to a keyring with no keys, whatever that's worth. It still doesn't cost anything, so you can keep just using a focus or a component pouch. That's totally fine. Damage is now behind the saving throw. It used to be the creature takes the full damage and then makes a saving throw for the rest of the effects. Now it's all one. You make a saving throw, you take half damage, or you take the full damage and have the effect. The damage has increased from 4d6 to 10d12. Very significant upgrade. And the effect no longer reduces the target's intelligence and charisma scores, though it does still prevent spellcasting and any use of the magic action. Obviously, spellcasters are going to be hit hardest by this, but some other things do use a magic action, so keep your eye on that if you do get befuddled. Feign Death now gives the target immunity to poison instead of only delaying the poison's effects. The spell also doesn't mention disease at all, which is in line with the rest of the design philosophy around that sort of thing. If you're using old content that still does use diseases, I would have Feign Death simply make them immune or delay a disease they already have until the end of the spell, like it used to. It's kind of in a weird gray area with old stuff like that, where the new stuff hasn't been printed with disease in mind, so kind of just gotta wing that. Find Familiar doesn't list as many beasts. Specifically, the crab, fish, and seahorse are gone from the list, but also specifies that any beast of CR 0, that's challenge rating 0, is a viable pick. So those creatures are still a choice. They just aren't specifically listed in the text anymore. Notably, the spell no longer allows the caster to pick the poisonous snake, though that is still an option for Pact of the Chain Warlocks. It is a little bit stronger than the other ones. The developers didn't like that it was sort of the premier pick. Or at least they thought it was. Obviously it's owls, but whatever. Using the familiar senses is a bonus action now instead of a full-on action, and it doesn't seem to replace our own senses. So we can sort of see through both our own eyes and our familiars, and hear through all the relevant ears at the same time. Find Steed changed a lot in that it now has its own stat block instead of having the caster summon a horse or a camel or what have you. It has its own stats, it upgrades with spell level, and starting at level 4 it even has a fly speed, sort of mashing Find Greater Steed into Find Steed as one spell. Paladins famously get this for free once per day, but in general the spell has changed in those ways. The steed specifically serves as a controlled mount while it's being ridden, which means you don't get to ride on it and have it attack. It can only dash, disengage, or dodge using its own action, which is still really good. Mounted combat's really good in this edition, and frankly, underused in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. The 3 creature types we can choose for the steed each come with a once per long rest bonus action ability they can use. That is brand new to the spell. The horses, etc. didn't get that before, so that's pretty cool. Fireball works mostly the same, except just like other similar spells and effects, it no longer wraps around corners. That is something Fireball used to be famous for doing. If someone's cowering behind a 4-foot tall wall, for example, Fireball would simply wrap around that and hit them anyway. Now it does not, which means partial cover is going to give the bonus to dexterity saving throws like it's supposed to, and creatures behind full cover will be simply unaffected. Firestorm no longer has the language in the description about choosing not to let plants light on fire, which is sort of a weird omission, especially since it's on the druid list. It used to be that druids, or anyone, could cast the spell and have it not light the trees and shrubbery and stuff on fire. Not a thing anymore. It just, burn baby burn, I guess. Flame Blade now adds the caster's spellcasting ability modifier to its damage rolls, so that's a little bit of an upgrade, and it scales a little bit faster, adding 1d6 per spell level instead of 1d6 every other spell level. Is it a good spell now? Probably not. As long as Shadowblade exists, I can't argue for this one, but it's at least, I'll say, castable, maybe. Flaming Sphere, the language has changed from ramming targets to entering target spaces, or entering a creature's space, which is a nice clarification. I've always run and seen this spell run as the sphere occupying its space and stopping right next to a creature and forcing it to make the saving throw, but apparently it actually does enter the creature's space and stays there and stops there. I'm a little unclear on if I've been doing this wrong the whole time, or if that actually changed with the new design intent, but either way, that's how it works now. Flesh to Stone now reduces a target speed to 0 on a successful save, which is pretty cool. It doesn't just do nothing anymore if the target rolls high. Fly now says the target or targets can hover, although other features sometimes reference spells and effects like the Fly spell holding a creature aloft. So now that it is more clear that with the hover effect, we can't fall if we're knocked prone, and things like that. Force Cage, infamously, now requires concentration. It also consumes its material component, meaning it's going to cost us 1,500 gold pieces in ruby dust every time we cast it. In a lot of ways, this is now overshadowed by Wall of Force, being that Wall of Force is a lower level spell. It doesn't cost any gold pieces, and it still requires concentration anyway. So there are still ways in which Force Cage is better, but the gap is a lot smaller now. It's a very costly spell. There's a brand new spell called Font of Moonlight, or Fount of Moonlight. I'm not really sure which way that's supposed to be pronounced. It has a U, so I assume it's Fount. In any case, it is an action to cast, lasts for 10 minutes, requires concentration, causes the caster to produce light, gives us resistance to radiant damage, and a reaction we can take when we take damage to blind our attacker. That's always a powerful debuff. And most interestingly, adds a 2d6 radiant damage buff to our melee attacks. Note, that does not say melee weapon attacks, so this actually buffs spell damage, which is one of the very few things in the game that can. Granted, it only buffs melee spell attacks like Shocking Grasp, or Toll the Dead, or Primal Savagery, Vampiric Touch, things like that, although Vampiric Touch also requires concentration, so that doesn't actually work. Moon Druids can also cast the spell in Wild Shape and apply that damage bonus to the attacks they make as their beast that they've transformed into. And like all weapon damage bonuses, this works great with things like multi-attack in Wild Shape or extra attack in any other situation, multiclassing, etc. And it can stack on the weapon attacks you make as part of True Strike, Booming Blade, or Green Flame Blade as well. Freedom of movement now specifically gives the target a swim speed, which is mostly a semantic difference, but is nice because other things in the game can reference if you have a swim speed or not. And the spell can now benefit from upcasting by targeting more creatures. It didn't do that before, and now it does. That is sheerly an upgrade. Also means it can be twinned by sorcerers. And last but not least, but maybe least, Friends now works sort of like a miniature charm person. It applies the charmed condition, which it didn't do before. It targets someone else instead of having a range of self. The target makes a wisdom saving throw, and it can only target the same creature again after 24 hours have passed. It also only lasts a minute, whereas charm person lasts a whole lot longer, and charm person doesn't require concentration. Friends only works on humanoid creatures, same as charm person. The spell ends early if the target takes any damage, or if the caster makes an attack roll, causes another creature to make a saving throw, or deals damage to any creature, whether it's the target of Friends or not. And this is probably the most important change, targets of the spell know that they are charmed after the spell ends, but aren't automatically hostile. That part is probably important. So with this rework, I can see the Friends cantrip being a little more widely useful. It was in a weird spot before where it was kind of really best for intimidation checks, oddly enough, and interrogation type situations, whereas now it's actually a little more friendly. And that is all of the F spells, so we are done with that list for today. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you all so much for watching, liking, subscribing, all the YouTube-friendly things, and I will see you in the next one, the letter G. Happy adventuring.